Hey guys, in just 9 days, the world's largest arena for sports and collectibles is back in New York City. Catch the return of Fanatics Fest from June 20th to the 22nd, where you could share the floor with the biggest names in sports. That means appearances by over 500 iconic athletes and celebrities from your favorite teams, including current and former New York Knicks legends, plus live panels and podcasts, exclusive merch collabs, a trading card area with 200 of the biggest dealers in the biz, and way, way more. Get your tickets today using the link in the description of this Knicks Film School episode you're either watching or listening to, and get 20% off your ticket price with promo code Knicks Film School 20. A great offer that has been extended until the opening day of Fanatics Fest on June 20th. Again, check the link in the description and use promo code Knicks Film School 20 for a 20% discount. When the world's greatest athletes gather in New York City, don't miss it. Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. I am pleased to be joined by the man of the hour. He's always the man of the hour. He's the man of every hour. Doesn't matter what day it is, what time of day. He's always the man of the hour. And I get to call him right now my colleague. And you know why? Because I'm on these emails. I get the baby emails now. I get the scheduling emails. SNY's Ian Begley. How you doing, bud?
Hey, man. I'm proud to call you a teammate. The emails are fun.
They are.
And, I'm happy to see you in that seat, man. It's awesome to see, and it's well deserved. And here's to many more new and different opportunities for you.
Well, listen, I'm sure the dozens of kind things that you have had to say about me and to me personally over the years had nothing to do with any of that. The checks in the mail. You know what? I'll start by apologizing because I always love having you on. But I always feel bad when we because we schedule these things ahead of time. And I feel bad when we get to the recording and we just have nothing to talk about like today. Because there's just nothing going on, Ian. I don't even know. What are you filling your time with? I mean, probably catching up on some summer reading, maybe. Any good books you got?
This is where we need Andrew Claudio to come in and be creative and come up with some good topics, because it's just slow. It's slow these days. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about how the Knicks could further improve their review procedures. They were great this year, but maybe they could get even a little bit better. All right, let's start at the beginning, and then we'll work our way forward. Knicks made it to Eastern Conference Finals this year. Obviously, a very like the furthest the team has gotten in 25 years. That was good. It was a very nice run. And yet we are sitting here today. We're going to be talking about a coach. We may get into some roster stuff. Do you think the front office thought that this was a successful season? And maybe that's an obvious question, but I feel like I need to start there, and then that'll kind of lead us everywhere else we need to go.
It's a great question. Could they define it as a success while also saying we needed a new coach to move forward? I guess you could. I mean, I guess you could parse it that way. Because obviously you have to see elements of this season as a success, and if you're the people who are responsible for putting the roster together, you probably want to make an argument to your boss what was successful about it, and then say, we need a new voice to carry us to that next level. So maybe you could look at it that way. But obviously the end result here and what we've seen in the past week or so, however long it's been, tells you that it was not a full success because of decisions that have been made around Tom Thibodeau and coaching future, and we'll see how it shakes out here with this coaching search. But clearly there was a feeling at the top that something was amiss and there needed to be changes. Yeah,
I mean, I keep thinking about, as I will probably for years to come, game one and how game one ended. And I feel like, smart media people always point out how, like, if you're an organization like, should you be making a decision based on like the bounce of a ball? Like if that Tyrese Halliburton shot is 2 inches to the left or 2 inches to the right, or we're probably sitting here. I shouldn't say probably. We might be sitting here having a very different conversation today. Like, do you, if you had to guess, like the front office, do you think that they thought a different coach would have won them like that series, or is that just too much to, or like we can't know that?
I mean, look, if I'm guessing, like, I guess logic would say that yes, they would say maybe another coach wouldn't have us in a game 7 at home. Maybe another coach would have us in winning that series in 6 games because of the talent gap, or whatever the case may be. And then the other question, John, is I think what you're getting at is if the Knicks made the finals, is this move made? I cannot think of a world where it happens that way. If the Knicks make the finals, I can't think of a world where Tom Thibodeau is not the head coach next year. So I think there you conclude that yes, the decision one way was made because of the bounce of a ball, but also the things that were kind of under the hood there. Maybe making the finals would have covered a lot of stuff up that you can gloss over if you take that step, but it's hard to gloss over when you fall short of where you think you should be.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So, all right. So I think that's one way of putting how this was. There was, and you've reported on this, Fred's reported on this, like everybody's reported on this. Like there seemed to have been some sort of momentum heading in this direction, potentially heading in this direction of Tom Thibodeau not being the coach of the team next year for a while. A lot of people gave you shit when you went on Zach's podcast, and you very clearly were like, hey, I would keep an eye out for this. And people were like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Well, lo and behold, like this did not come out of nowhere. And the other thing that you've been very clear on reporting about is that this was a Leon Rose decision. Me as a Knicks fan who always, it doesn't matter how they could win 10 championships in a row, and I'm always going to see James Dolan as like, to some extent, the boogeyman. You could hold that against me if you want. Anyone listening could hold that against me. You can say, Macri, you're crazy. You have PTSD. I'm trying to reconcile the impact he had here. And so I'm just going to ask you, because again, you've been very clear about reporting. Like, I guess I'll ask it this way. If Dolan was not involved in this at all, do we think this goes down the way that it goes down in like the timing of all of it? Or do you think it just didn't have an impact at all?
Okay. So I want to say this.
Okay.
Leon Rose led decision, I think is the most accurate way to put it. Okay. Leon Rose, like putting this to the finish line, I think is the most accurate way to put it. And so, to answer your question, I would guess that the process in the aftermath of the season, meaning like the interviews with the players and yes, Tom Thibodeau and his staff and all that, maybe the process there is different. But I do think that the same degree of scrutiny would be placed on the head coach if it was just Leon Rose. And I think it's important to point out, to me at least, that like there were times where Tom Thibodeau, his seat was burning hot over the course of his Knicks tenure. Once after the Kemba Walker year All-Star break, they'd gotten their doors blown off a few games in a row, got lost to Brooklyn at home in an ugly loss. And Leon Rose was given the green light by James Dolan to make the decision that he saw fit on the head coach. And Leon Rose stuck with Tom Thibodeau, and we know how it played out. And then early in Jalen Brunson's tenure, they're struggling. I think they were a loss away from major changes early in that year. And yes. And then, my understanding was Leon Rose had no desire to fire Tom Thibodeau and continue in his position. If it came to it, if James Dolan said, look, I'm demanding a change, my understanding is Leon Rose would have walked with Tom Thibodeau. And so there were instances here where Leon Rose's, opinion of Tom Thibodeau, relationship with Tom Thibodeau led him to a strong defense of the head coach. And there were things that happened, in my understanding, over the course of the year, where that trust and that desire to kind of lay down on the train tracks for your guy changed, and it wasn't as strong. And so that's where I go with this instance. Like, if Leon Rose didn't want this to happen, things would have shaken out another way, whether it's Leon leaving with Tom or Tom staying. And so that's where I am with it. Look, we could get into the rest of it. I just want to answer your first question there. We can get on the rest of it.
That was so helpful. And it's a perfect segue to the only, and I want to be forward looking, because I know there's a lot of people who are just like, what's done is done, like move on. But one more.
I do think it's important though, like the element of the owner, because of what you mentioned in your question, like the history there and the history of. Yeah, no. I think it would be foolish or not having enough of a critical eye to ignore that. So I think you're right to wonder about that. It's totally fair. So anyway, go ahead.
That I don't want to put words in your mouth. The kind of erosion of I don't want to say erosion of trust, but like the not being willing to lay down on the train tracks maybe as much this year as in years past. Do you think that was more about communication process, like day-to-day interaction of front office and coaching staff, or was that more about like, the front office sitting around and meeting, talking about X's and O's and lineups and things like that, and being like, this is, or was it some kind of blend of the two?
It's hard for me to guess accurately, but my assumption is that it is a blend of the two. But if you wanted to weight one more than the other, it wouldn't be the X's and O's that gets the 65% in that equation. It would probably be the other stuff. And so, I think it was. I don't think there was like a straw here that broke the camel's back, so to speak, in terms of this specific thing. And then in terms of in the bigger picture, Tom Thibodeau's firing, it was a compilation of things that, I think some of it, and I think it's fair to say some of it are things that had happened in previous Thibodeau eras in Chicago or Minnesota, what have you. And I'm sure there were other things that were new, that were unique to this situation. But I do think that it was a compilation of things that led to the micro of what we're talking about with Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau, and then the macro with the Thibodeau decision.
Okay, so this is going to, I think, start to get us moving forward, because the Thibodeau is gone, but the players, obviously, that finished the season are all still on the roster. Mm-hmm. Something that I've been wondering personally is whether there is a thought within the front office of that is more along the lines of like, all right, we will change the coach. That will solve enough of the issues whereby we don't feel we need to make a potentially drastic roster move, versus we felt like we needed to go in a different direction with the coaching position anyway. That maybe doesn't even, not that it doesn't affect, but it doesn't affect our opinion of how this roster came together enough where we're not going to still look and see if there are moves out there. Now that's a different conversation from like whether there's actually anything that makes sense for them to do. Sure. But if you had to kind of guess, do you think that the coaching kind of is separate from the roster thing, or do you think it's more tied together?
I would think that anything that would have been under consideration with Tom Thibodeau as head coach would still be under consideration under this new head coach, unless the new head coach says, hey, you guys were thinking about X. It doesn't really fit with what I want to do. Let's take that off the table. I just want to circle back quickly, John, on Dolan, James Dolan's role.
Sure, yeah.
Also, if James Dolan didn't want this to happen, it wouldn't have happened. So certainly he played a role in the final decision here. As I reported, he was involved in those meetings. He was in the meetings. And so certainly he played a role. I don't want to, I'm not trying to, ignore that. And the players' input also played a role in the final decision here. But this was not something that was decided really during the Indiana series. It was really up in the air. My understanding of it, it was up in the air even the day after the season ended. And it was, so that's why I think the meetings mattered. And James Dolan obviously signs off on it because he owes Tom Thibodeau $30+ million, but also beyond that, he was in favor of it. So I just want to make sure like that it's not like Dolan was totally not involved or Dolan was putting his thumb on the scale and yelling and throwing over tables, and it was his call. It's like it's somewhere in the middle, but I think it's accurate to say it was a Leon Rose led decision. Sorry, I digress.
No, it's fine.
I think with the moves, I really think it's hard to answer that without knowing who the head coach is. But I don't think that. I think that with the opinion of the roster in general, look, it's human nature. If you make those moves, you're going to believe in the guys that you put together and you brought together. I think that there was internally, depending on who you talk to, a heavy amount of scrutiny of the new players that were brought in, and not a questioning of the fit, but more so just high scrutiny of the play across the course of the regular season. So what Leon Rose thinks of the roster, I don't know. I just think that a lot is on the table, would be on the table if Tom Thibodeau was head coach, in terms of potential moves, different directions to go.
That makes a lot of sense. And like, just to close the loop on the Dolan thing, since you brought it up again, it's always funny how people, this stuff always tends to get made into a black and white scenario. Whereas it's like in life, if someone moves on from a job or loses a job it's like, there's always so much nuance involved. There's always so much gray area involved. Like, these things are rarely, if ever, black and white. And it just, it feels like this is one of those scenarios. The thing that's interesting with Dolan for me, the one thing that has been seemingly reported like universally through the years, is he is very pro player. Like, you'll very rarely find a player that has something bad to say about James Dolan. So again, in my mind, I'm like, if he is in these meetings, as you've reported, and there is a player that expresses some level of misgivings, I shouldn't even say misgivings, just something where they maybe did not feel like they were in their best position to succeed this year, or whatever, something other than a glowing recommendation, I would imagine that would probably go a long way with him. Is, again, we don't have Dolan on the pod, but like that's my guess.
I think if you're Leon Rose, Jim Dolan, and you're listening to the answers from the players, and look, the players totally respectful of Tom Thibodeau, and he's got a lot of admiration and respect throughout that roster, 1 to 18, or I don't know how many two ways they ended the season with. So I think that's important to note. But I think also that what was noted in these interviews was things that players hoped would change, players felt should change, players felt were maybe reasons that they were held back. Maybe individually, but certainly team-wise. And so I think it's hard to ignore that stuff if you're Leon Rose and you're Jim Dolan. If you're going to go to the point where you're asking the questions, you can't ignore what you hear. And so you take that information into account, certainly with that decision. So James Dolan, I think with the star players in particular, you hear a lot how they don't understand the public perception of the guy because he's great with them. And so there's that. And I'm sure you're just listening to your employees when you're putting them in that position. You want to hear their feedback honestly, and it's going to matter in the final decision that you make.
Yeah, no, totally.
Hey guys, GMAC here. Quick break on behalf of our friends at Fanatics Sportsbook. Let's take a look at some odds they've sent us to see who will be the New York Knicks' next head coach. Johnny Bryant, your front runner at plus 150. Maybe Ian Begley will say something about Johnny Bryant in the second half of this episode. Stay tuned. The other three strong candidates, Mike Brown, Mike Malone, Taylor Jenkins, plus 250, plus 300, plus 400. Mike Brown, been to an NBA Finals as a head coach. Mike Malone, plus 300. Won an NBA Finals. Taylor Jenkins, unlike Mike Brown and Mike Malone, didn't have a league MVP on his team when he got pretty far into the West playoffs. So he doesn't have the finals reputation, but does have a reputation for maximizing a roster. So maybe that's a good bet if you want to hypothetically go that direction. James Borrego, plus 2,000. Mike Budenholzer plus 2,500, Jeff Van Gundy plus 3,500, along with Monty Williams, and then Chris Quinn, the Miami Heat assistant coach, at plus 7,000. I'll just say this on the long shots: if Chris Quinn were to get the Knicks job, I need him to resign from the Miami Heat by faxing in a notice to Pat Riley, just for my own personal wishes. Monty Williams, I think, just like Tom Thibodeau, will find a way to be happy not coaching a team and yet still getting paid millions of dollars by them, as Monty Williams is getting paid a lot of money to not coach the Detroit Pistons anymore. And then Jeff Van Gundy, unfortunately, anybody that has that dream, I will just remind you why he resigned from the Knicks, and it's because of the person that still owns the New York Knicks. So I would rule a lot of these out. Johnny Bryant, the front runner. Let's see if we hear more about him. The three veteran head coaches after him, I think, are very interesting choices if you were to go that direction. Shout out to the fine folks over at Fanatics Sportsbook. Earn up to 10% back on your bets, win or lose. Use fan cash on team gear on fanatics.com, or bonus bets and profit boosts in the Fanatics Sportsbook app. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut residents, call 888-789-777. Massachusetts residents, 800-327-5050. New York residents, 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland residents, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. And now, back to the show.
So now we're here. The new, I'm pretty sure you've reported it, everybody's reported it. The Knicks have, or had, I should say, requested permission to speak to three different current NBA head coaches, Ime Udoka, Chris Finch, and Jason Kidd, and were denied by all three. So again, this is one of those things where, me not being a reporter, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm hoping you do. If we see a team denies permission to speak to their current head coach, is it fair to assume that the coach is not pushing, that the coach in question is not pushing to get the job in question?
I don't think you could make that assumption.
Okay. That's why I'm happy you clarified.
Yeah, I think so. Like, with the permission, I don't think it's realistic to think any team is going to just openly give the Knicks permission to speak to their head coach. I think the elements behind the scenes would have to be the pressure from the head coach or his representatives on the front office, on ownership, or just a personal plea from the head coach about this next opportunity and why it's important to that head coach. They're not just going to do it without some kind of lobbying from the head coach and his side. And so, with Jason Kidd, really with any of the coaches, but with Jason Kidd, let's just talk about that because it's gotten a lot of airtime. It would be on him to create a situation where the ownership with Dallas or Nico Harrison gives that permission to the Knicks, because either there's an understanding that Kidd is unhappy. Okay. There's an understanding that, we love Jason. This is his, dream job. We want to grant him this opportunity. There's got to be some element of a push from that side for it to happen, unless the front office is done with the head coach, and in that case, that's not the case, obviously, with these three guys we're talking about.
Yeah, and then the compensation part of it, which again has been already discussed. Is it fair to assume that let's again focus with Kidd and Dallas. Is it fair to assume that stage was not even reached, or is it possible that there was already discussions about what the compensation might be, and that factors into this, or is there just no way to know that right now?
No way to know. But look, there's third parties, there's back channels, there's obvious ways to communicate indirectly, the thoughts and the parameters of what things may look like or may not look like. And so I think we'd be naive to believe that there was zero back channel communication, third party communication about what a deal might look like, or why we want you, or why a kid would maybe want the Knicks. I mean, all that stuff can be communicated without this permission. I guess it's illegal, but it happens all the time in every element of the league. So I would be surprised if there weren't at least like loose ideas exchanged through distant intermediaries, to where there was a vague understanding of what was and what wasn't on the table.
That makes sense. In your opinion, do you think the fact that Tom Thibodeau's, undeniably the most successful head coach the franchise has had in multiple decades, like how him getting fired, maybe how he got fired, like, do you think that is having an impact on the desirability of this job for other potential coaches?
Yeah, I think for me, it depends on who I'm listening to. You talk to people outside, and particularly people who are maybe associated with some of these coaches that the Knicks have interest in, and that's what they'll say. They'll say, okay, this job, nobody wants the job. This job's impossible. Like, how could you go in there and take over this team at this point, having just made this decision? Bar is so high. Like, this is not an attractive job. You talk to people closer to the Knicks, and they don't feel that way. They say, look, we're on an upward trajectory here. We're always hiring a head coach when we're stuck at the bottom, but here it's much different. It's New York. Certainly there's, financial resources there with Jim Dolan that may not be available other places. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends on the individual. I can certainly see the argument that, hey, I'm more comfortable in my current situation where I know everything. I know the pros and cons, as opposed to jumping headfirst into the situation in New York. I could definitely see that. But yeah, I don't know. But again, it just depends on who you're talking to, who you're listening to, and how much credence you put in those thoughts and those conversations.
I have a question that might seem odd, but I'm going to ask it. Is Johnnie Bryant a candidate for this job, to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, Johnnie, it wouldn't be near the top of a list. If there is a list, that's to the best of my knowledge. Okay. Could things break in such a way where he ends up as the head coach? Yeah, of course. But to the best of my knowledge today, he would not be in that top echelon of a list if a list did exist.
Tell me to shut up, yell at me if I'm asking stupid questions.
No, man, come on, anything.
Should I, again, me, Joe Knicks fan here, should I read that? Again, to the extent that and who knows, like you said, we don't know. Nobody knows anything for sure. Maybe they're going to hire Johnnie Bryant in 5 minutes. But to the extent that Johnnie Bryant may not be near the top of that list right now, do you think that would be more a reflection on Bryant, or more a reflection that the front office, ownership, whatever, feels that they need someone with head coaching experience in some capacity to step foot into a job that is clearly going to have a ton of pressure and a lot of attention?
Yeah, I would think more so the latter. I would think more so, it's not about Johnnie, and it's about the experience. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But I would just based on, his time here, where he is now, and also where the Knicks are now. I'm just assuming that they if all things are equal, they want a head coach who's been there, who's been either to the top of the mountain or who's been, into the playoffs and knows what's coming, as opposed to a first-year head coach without that experience.
Do you think that logic extends to college coaches as well? Or do we just not really have a sense of that right now?
Look, I think that, if you go back to that last search, right, when Leon Rose and William Wesley were talking to coaches, and Scott Perry at that point were talking to coaches, they casted a really wide net. I think they officially interviewed 11 coaches, maybe, even though it seemed a fait accompli that Tom Thibodeau was going to be the guy that they were going to end up going with. Now it's different, right? It's a different situation where clearly there was no shoe-in candidate once this decision was made, that they knew, hey, this is going to be our guy. I don't think that's the case here, but I do think that the Knicks doing their due diligence and Leon Rose being detail-oriented, wanting to make sure he knows exactly what is available to him, who is available to him, and who isn't. I think that's what you're seeing here with the asking the permission with Minnesota, with Houston, with Dallas, and who knows, maybe other teams. And so I think right now it's just a fact-finding mission, and I do think that they're going to cast a wide net here. I don't think you should be surprised if Johnnie Bryant, gets interviewed and makes it maybe deep into the process. And I don't think you should be surprised if they're interviewing NBA assistants or college head coaches. And to your question, though, John, I don't know the answer as far as would you bring on a college coach who didn't have any NBA experience. I would think that the Jay Wright thing, it seemed more so like a formality to me than like a real, we want you, tell us no. It seemed more like a formality, like he's happy, maybe so. But I do think that I don't think that would prevent them from hiring a college head coach with strong head coaching experience who's been in that seat for a long time, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So, you may have just answered this, but like, do you think that this process has played out so far? Again, what's today, Tuesday, or Wednesday? We're a little bit more than a week since they fired Thibs. Do you think the process has played out as Leon would have expected, or is that even an unfair question? Do you think like the decision to fire Thibs was the decision to fire Thibs, and then they did not that they didn't think about the process of hiring a head coach or who the next coach would be, but that was almost separate and apart from that decision in their minds?
I do think to a high degree to agree that maybe you wouldn't expect it was separate. Okay. And I think that's clear with how things have played out. I think that, look, in a perfect world, the Knicks would have got permission on one of these guys. And I think that that the asks were made not because they knew 100% that they were going to be turned down. I think that there was a shot. They thought that they could kind of work an angle and get in there and procure one of these guys. And so I don't think it's played out to the maybe it's played out how Leon Rose thought it was going to play out, but it hasn't played out with them like having hit their top targets and having the process that they felt was going to be in place play out that way. So I think it's fair to say that there was no candidate that was a shoo-in when this thing started. And again, I think it's just turn over every stone, find out what's possible, what isn't possible, and gather information, and then make the decision from there.
So we shouldn't have an image in our minds of like Leon and Wes and Brock Aller like running around the office like pulling out Rolodexes out of drawers, like being like, who's the next number? That's not, we don't think that that's what's happening.
Like if there's Rolodexes being pulled out, I think that's a different conversation. I think that they maybe need.
Do you have a Rolodex in your house, or do you not have a Rolodex?
I don't, man. I do not. So that would be troubling. But yeah, no, I think like, yeah, I don't think that like there's enough relationships and enough knowledge of the landscape where I think to call it a scramble is probably overstating it, but it's certainly fair to say that like unlike the last time where, you know, there was a distinct process and there was information gathering, and then even though there was someone I think in mind the whole time at the end that was available, and that's how it played out with Tom Thibodeau, with Leon Rose's first coaching search. This is different. This is not like there's an end game that you're eventually probably going to get to. It's more open than that.
All right. I've taken way too much of your time on this stuff already. I got to hit some quick hitters before I get you go on the stuff that people actually care about. Some names. Do you have any names that we should keep an eye out for?
Man, like I think Mike Brown, just because of the experience that he has, I think that Taylor Jenkins, you have to at least talk to him, right? Like,
for me, either him or Vogel. Honestly, him, Vogel, or Mike Brown. I think there are three good head coaches. You know, you know,
and then like Budenholzer. Like you have to have conversations there. So I'd be surprised if there was no formal interview process, or at least enough informal contact to the point where you know where that coach stands. Look, there's a coach who has coached in New York, and I think coaching in New York matters, right? So there's a coach that has coached in New York who battled the media, battled his players in a healthy way. And I think people will, you know, react to this in an unserious way. But Mike Woodson, associate head coach with the Kings, very strong relationship with Leon Rose, William Wesley. I'd just say I would be surprised if they didn't, you know, just at least have a conversation there with Mike because of his history in this organization and the success that he had and his ability to deal with New York, to deal with specifically the Knicks. I think he and James Dolan, my understanding, are on good terms. So that's a wild card there, but that's just another one that at least is on my mind.
Listen, you go sort through the history of Knicks coaches by winning percentage. Not too many names above Mike Woodson. He did a lot of winning here. Okay, couple transactional things. Mm-hmm. You have been, you know, I put this one under the category of Ian always knows a little bit more than he says, or doesn't maybe put things as strongly as he could. You've been pretty clear that KD to the Knicks is something that, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, would surprise you.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you why, or if you have any? Can you elucidate on that anymore? Because KD's been an interest, a target of mine that if I was the Knicks, I would at least kick the tires on. So that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I want to say that I think there would have to be a major sea change from what the thinking was, even, you know, in the regular season during the playoffs, to make Durant to New York more of a reality. I want to say too that I do think the next head coach matters. I mean, if the next head coach says, "Hey, give me number 35 and I'll get you a championship," maybe the overall attitude changes. With regard to specifics, I mean, I'm not whispers, like I know, but I don't have anything strong enough to like definitively report. But just based on those, you know, whispers, it has struck me as a long shot. And look, I mean, yeah, let's see who that coach is. Let's see what the Suns' asking price is. Let's see how all those factors play out, I believe, ahead of the draft. But again, to date, I think there would have to be a big sea change in order for them to put the things on the table needed to get Kevin Durant.
You made me realize I asked the question in the wrong way. I should have asked, is that more of a a Phoenix thing or more of a New York thing? And I'm getting from your answer that it's maybe how New York feels about whether they should bring in Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it is more of a New York thing. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a bad job by me. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a player that plays in the league and has had some success. I would be shocked if they were able to put a deal together. Obviously, the latest reporting is that there are no talk of any deals because Giannis has not requested a trade, and the Bucks don't seem to be the type of team that is just going to trade him if he doesn't ask for it. Do you have anything on the Giannis front other than nothing to see here?
Yeah, I mean, the quote from the overseas outlet that Giannis gave about the finals and the Bucks, I mean, that's fascinating to me. I don't know. I haven't heard that he's like declared loyalty in a formal way to Milwaukee. I don't think teams are operating that way, although with that quote being what it is, it certainly leads you to believe eventually that's the way he's going to go. But in terms of, look, it's obvious, right, that if he was out there and available, so much would have to fall into place for him to end up at the Garden. And, it starts with his demand to go to New York, and then it's Milwaukee's willingness to make that happen. And so to me, those are two huge hurdles before this becomes something that's close to a reality. And I just don't know if Milwaukee would want to put him where he wants to go. I don't know if he would make it the kind of demand where he'd say it's New York or bust. I'm not sure, but it's obvious that New York would have strong interest if that were the case. They would, like any other team that had a chance at him, they would love to have him.
So given that Durant and Giannis are the two big salary players out there, again, my read on the current situation, and I think when you were on with Zach, you said 85% you thought that Cat would be back. I don't see another obvious Cat deal. I'm curious how much of your assumption that, again, things could always change, crazy stuff happens, this is the NBA, but how much of your current stance that like Cat's the vast likelihood is that he's going to be back, how much of that do you think is just about like there's not going to be the thing out there that they would be able to trade him for that would be enough value in their eyes, or do you think that there's more to it than that?
I mean, I think there's a little bit more to it because when you make that trade and the Mikal trade, you're not making that trade for a 1-year flyer. And, if the team makes the conference finals but doesn't get to the finals, you pull the plug. I think that there was a strong belief in what Karl-Anthony Towns could bring to the Knicks. And I think, he showed a lot of evidence to support that. And then he showed evidence that it may not be the ultimate piece here to lead you where you want to go. So I say that to say, I don't think it's just about, can we get Giannis for Karl Towns, or is there a deal where we can get off of Karl Towns, quote unquote? It's more so if a Giannis becomes available, or if a player X becomes available, and we have to put Karl-Anthony Towns in the deal to get this player who we know will make us better and potentially take us further. I think that's where that 15% for me lies. I don't think there's any desire to dump Karl Towns or to get off of him in any way, shape, or form, despite the understandable fan and media criticism in the aftermath of the series. I want to say understandable basketball criticism. Yeah, the other stuff is garbage. Complete nonsense, in my opinion. Totally unfair. Just not okay. But the basketball stuff, I want to say that is totally justifiable. But I don't think there's hey, we need to get off Karl Towns, and no matter how we can do it, we got to make it happen. I don't think that's the case.
I'm not going to say it's not. The basketball stuff is not. I co-sign everything you said about the other stuff. I'm not going to sit here and say the basketball stuff isn't justifiable, but like, man, the on-off numbers, like advanced data, like regular season, postseason, like they do not paint Karl Towns as the problem as to why the Knicks maybe struggled defensively or some other things just should be noted. A couple more. I'm keeping you way too long. I'm sorry.
Let me just say also, I don't know how you feel about it, John, but I think that if you're going to criticize Karl Towns, you got to criticize the coaches and more so the front office, because it's not like he's a second-year player. Like, you knew there's plenty of tape of Karl Towns out there. You knew his strengths and his weaknesses when you dealt for him. So it's up to you to put him in situations that amplify the strengths, and to quote Tom Thibodeau, which I'm going to miss asking him questions, man, to cover up his weaknesses. And so if you don't do that and it plays out in the way it played out against Indiana, sure, blame Karl Towns, but also you have to blame the front office and maybe to a lesser degree the coaching staff for the deficiencies coming to the surface there.
I think there's an argument that Cat had the best season of his career. And like, I know there were some playoff moments that were not great. He won them game 3 against Indiana, and his game 1 performance against Indiana should have been enough to win that game, because it was brilliant. It was utterly brilliant. So, you know, that it all goes on the ledger. Like, you can't just ignore the stuff that you don't like and all that stuff. Do you, if you had to guess, do you think the front office thinks that a new coach will help make Karl Towns, and I guess to a certain extent Mikal Bridges, solve maybe some of the issues that people have with the seasons that they produced?
Yeah. I mean, just a logical guess, yeah. But I don't think like the decision was like solely about like his offense can't unlock Karl Towns or can't unlock Mikal Bridges. I think that, like, as we talked about earlier, there was, you know, a lot there. And some of it was not X's and O's. But yeah, I'm sure that the hope there is, whether it's the head coach or the head coach and that head coach's staff, you can get more out of Towns, you get more out of Bridges, and you can make the pieces work in a way, maybe to a higher level than Tom Thibodeau did, or maybe just more so a willingness to try different things to see what works too during the regular season. But this Knicks offense, I mean, John, the numbers, regular season were, I think, good. Well, you guys did a great job, and I want to credit Fred and James and Benji and DJ. You guys were all over the idea that the wing guarding Towns and the big guarding Hart, that was not some secret on earth in the postseason. That was something that you'd seen, for much of the year, particularly after January 1, and the Knicks didn't make any adjustments there. So I think openness to adjusting, in my mind, would be something that the Knicks guy would bring to the table.
Yeah, I think my biggest question is probably like day 1 or opening night of next year. Is it the same starting line? Like, what's the starting lineup? That's probably my biggest question right now, which obviously I don't think any of us can answer that right now. All right. Last one. Tom Thibodeau took out a full page ad today in the New York Times thanking coaching staff, fans. I think, did he thank the organization? Probably thank the organization. No, didn't thank the organization.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think it was coaches and fans, and that was it.
That was it. Players, maybe? Probably players.
Yeah, sorry. Coaches, fans, and players. Yeah, sorry. Of course.
You covered Thibs for 5 years. I know you've spoken about him a little bit here and there on the putback and maybe some other formats. I just want to give you the floor, like, thoughts on Thibs as a coach, as a person, and yeah.
I mean, look, the dedication to the craft, I think, is what you hear is real, and then some. The idea that he has his teams night in and night out as well prepared as anybody on the planet, I think, is also very true. That's not just a myth, and that's why you get the success that you get with Tom Thibodeau. And so, look, the contributions in my mind that he made to the organization if they win a championship, he's just a part of that championship to me than anybody on that who would be on that current roster, current front office, current coaching staff. To me, if they win a title, he's definitely among the people who should never pay for a drink or a meal in New York again. And I think to underplay what he's done here is to do a massive disservice to Thibodeau, but also just to ignore reality because of where the Knicks were when they started with him and where they are today. Just look, you can call him a floor, I guess, what do you want to say? A builder of a foundation, a floor raiser, but a guy who maybe can't get you over to the ultimate goal. And sure, that's fair if you want to look at it that way. But the Knicks are nowhere near where they are right now without him. And so every coach has his flaws. Tom Thibodeau has his flaws, but if you're a Knicks fan, he gave you a lot of moments to get excited over and to be happy about. And I think you got to give him credit for that.
I have nothing to add to that. Thank you, Ian. This was great. You've been incredibly generous. Not that anybody listening to this needs to hear it, but can you just let folks know what to look out for from you?
Yeah, I mean, just continuing to opine and report on the coaching search and see where that takes us. And then I think, as Brian Windhorst noted yesterday, around the draft, it will be a busy time, particularly because of the Durant stuff. So there's going to be stuff to talk about there. I think we'll have more putback episodes leading up to the draft. So just, keep an eye on my Twitter at Ian Begley, and then everything on SNY .tv and the airwaves. And also keep an eye out Honda Sports Night for my friend of yours, John Macri, because he's been doing a great job there, and I'm sure he'll continue to do so.
It's fun, man. Those are cool little spots. It's a different type of thing though, because on here I can talk for literally 5 hours by myself. I can say whatever the hell I want. It's like, no, you got 35 seconds. Okay,
and no cursing also, which is
well, that's for me. I don't think I cursed though too much on this. I hope I didn't curse too much.
No, you don't. Occasionally, though.
Occasionally, have some choice moments. Ian Begley, you're the freaking best. I said freaking. What? Andrew's giving me a look here.
On this episode or in general are we talking?
On this episode. Oh
yeah, no, you're perfectly professional. SNY can air this if they'd like to.
Ian, thank you so much. The thanks that I could give you for dozens of things that people will never know about. It's a long list. So thanks for appearing on this episode. Suffice it to say now, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Dude, always love coming on here with you. Always love having you on our stuff. Always love hearing your perspective. And I appreciate you. Always good talking to you.
Ian Begley for Knicks coach. You heard it here first.
Sign all the way off.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. Go watch Ian on the putback whenever you see those alerts. He gets the best guests, has the best insight. It's the best of everything. And we'll see you back here for more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.